Hello, how's everyone doing today? I'm Susan Wasserman, Advisory Committee member of the Cleveland Israel Arts Connection, a program of the Jewish Federation of Cleveland. I'm delighted to welcome you today to Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in Contemporary Israeli Cinema. As many of you know, the goal of the Cleveland Israel Arts Connection is to connect our community with the most dynamic 21st century cultural experiences that Israel has to offer. In 10 years, we have helped bring in over 100 Israeli artists to Cleveland and partnered with 50 fine arts organizations. These include all the arts: music, film, visual art, literature, theater, dance, fashion and design, and even the culinary arts. The Cleveland Israel Arts Connection is pleased to announce a partnership with Siegel Lifelong Learning at Case Western Reserve University. Together, we will offer arts opportunities every month for you to enjoy virtually until we are able to gather together in person again. You can learn more about the offerings by joining the Cleveland Israel Arts Connection crew on Facebook or visiting the Siegel Lifelong Learning website. Before we begin, I want to extend a few thank yous. First, a hearty thank you to Ro Green, honorary producer and co-chair with Erica Hartman Horvitz for their leadership and their vision. Thank you to the sponsors of Cleveland Israeli Arts Connection, the Ro Green Foundation, the Leonard Krieger Fund of the Cleveland Foundation, Cuyahoga Arts and Culture, Zinner and Company, BNY Mellon Wealth Management, and the Consulate General of Israel in New York. Thank you also to the Arts Advisory Group and the Patron Society, who support the Cleveland Israel Arts Connection throughout the year. This program would not exist without your support. I would be remiss if I did not also thank the over 12,000 donors who contributed to the annual campaign for Jewish needs. Together, our community raised over $33 million to help Jews in need in Cleveland, Israel, and around the world. A huge thank you. I'm delighted to be here today to share my love of film. For those of you I haven't met, I am co-chair of the Mandel JCC Cleveland Jewish Film Festival. I also serve on the board of the Anti-Defamation League, so diversity, equity, and inclusion in film is a topic of particular interest. Our guest speaker today is Eran Polishuk. Eran is an independent producer and promoter of films and media. He has worked in top festivals, distribution companies, and philanthropic organizations, as well as film and education institutes. In 2020, Eran launched Chapter 2 Films, a distribution and media strategy company dedicated to representing independent filmmakers, bringing exciting new trends in film to the American and international film scene, committed to reflecting diverse cultures, especially ethnic minorities and LGBTQ communities. He is no stranger to Cleveland. He was here in 2018 to present the very first Cleveland Israel Arts Connection Forum on religious women in Israel film. Today, we welcome him to discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion in contemporary Israeli cinema. Hello, Eran? How are you?
Shalom,
Hi.
Susan.
Hello.
What a timing that the dog just started to bark. I'm just going to tell her to stop. You see, don't you love like live stuff? This is the, don't you like, so hey, wait. Okay, we will try our best. So shalom everyone, and I'm so excited to be here with you. It's like midnight here in Israel, but I'm very sharp. I had a lot of coffee, and it's wonderful to be again with you, with the Jewish Cleveland Federation. And I'm very grateful because I was there. Thanks, Debbie Yasino. She's here somewhere you don't see her. Invited me a few years ago, and I'm very excited to do this now. I discovered the cinematic universe of Cleveland, the cultural universe of Cleveland, and it's wonderful to be here. And we're going to jump very soon to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion in Israeli cinema. And I know it's a big topic. We can talk about this for days. So basically, this is like a tasting menus. And I know we all miss to go to restaurants and to the cinema, so we'll do our best to make everyone to enjoy this next 51 minutes. So in the meantime, you can go bring like a snack and come join us, and let's jump in.
Yes, well, like I said, thank you so much. And this is a very exciting program. And, but I think a lot of people are asking, what does it mean, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the Israeli cinema?
Okay, well, this is the question, and basically we're going to try to answer on this in the next 15 minutes. Now, you know, Susan, the call for inclusion throughout the film industry has been heard in Israel. Basically, it's been heard everywhere in the universe, but obviously we're here talking about Israeli cinema. And it has been heard in Israel, and its state-funded cinema system has headed the call by green lights as a myriad of films and about an ever-widening range of Israel diverse populations. It's very diverse. Films reflecting the cultural diversity of this country with this community and populations. These films are going everywhere in the festival circuit world. They're doing very good theatrically. And we're going to see some of those voices. Some of them are maybe going to be equivalent to the States. So let's just jump in. You know what I think about, because we have a lot of examples to show. And I want to start with an example from a film that I just saw like a few days ago. It's a film, it's called Sublet. It's by director Eitan Fox. Some of you know him from his old films. He made Walk on Water, that was a big, huge hit, I think around 15 years ago. And he made also The Bubble. And this film, we're just going to see like a very short, just the first minute. I'm going to make a spoiler. A tourist come to Israel, is coming from New York City, is coming to Tel Aviv, and please have a look. Those of you who have been in the Israeli airport knows how, you know, you're sliding the beginning and you're getting, so basically we're going to see him in just the first minute. We're going to see him when he arrives to the airport, and look at what the characters around him, and then we're going to jump later to the talk. So now let's watch Sublet. The first minute and 15 seconds of the film.
Great.
Sorry. לא, אני כבר בשדה.
התחילו, يعني انبسطنا. די, נו, אתה רציני?
Hello. Hi, how are you? Welcome. Thank you. Please.
Okay.
Turn it down a little.
Okay, well, I was just about to say again, we can turn it down, and he said it. So I wanted to show this example. I saw it and said, wow, we have here all the cliches about Israel society when a tourist is coming. So in the beginning, we saw probably Caucasian bourgeois couple, and then we saw the typical Israeli backpackers, and then maybe some of you saw like two Orthodox men, and of course at the end in the back we had an Arab-Israeli couple. He gets into the taxi, and probably it's a Sephardic taxi driver, and he listened to one of the biggest hits of the Mizrahi music. So this is what when we're thinking about Israel, right? So I saw this minute and I said, I have to start with this because this is so-called diverse, but we're not going to talk about none of those communities in today. We're going to try to go deeper to that. And this is what we're talking about: diversity, equity, and inclusion. To go the layers that are deeper, those communities that are not represented mostly on culture. Now, one of the biggest, and it's very interesting. When I was invited to do this event, I didn't check the dates, and we're now in the middle of the Sundance Film Festival that usually on times when there is no pandemic takes place in Park City, Utah. But now it's online, which is wonderful. Even to talk about this from cinematic and cultural perspective, only those that can afford to go to the Sundance Film Festival are going. So one of the beautiful things about today that stuff are virtual, that everyone can join the Sundance Film Festival. And Sundance Film Festival puts on its shoulder the call for diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially representation of women in film. For many years, it was a very, very, it was word of male directors, and we do see the change. So it also goes in the world of Israeli cinema. We do want to see more films made by women. And we're going to see many examples about films made by women. So there is a new film. It's called In the Director's Chair Sits a Woman. It's a documentary film. It's a new documentary film made by Smadar Zamir. And basically what she's doing, she took 26 directors, Israeli directors. There were only 80 narrative feature films out of 800 Israeli narrative feature films made by women. And she took 26 of them to talk about the experience, about what is it to be a female director. So basically, we're just going to see the trailer. So you will see the world we are inside it. So let's see the trailer of The Director's Chair Sits.
לקטורים שלום רב.
מי אתם שתגידו לי שאין דברים כאלה?
הסתכלתי סביב, יש רק במאים.
אין לי זמן, אני מתה לעשות גם עוד ילד וגם עוד סרט.
אמא שלי לא הבינה מה אני עושה.
כל מה שאלו אותי, אבל איך תדעי מה לעשות?
אקשן, קאט, אימא'לה.
20 חבר'ה ואני אגיד להם ימינה, שמאלה, מי אני?
בטח מקריית משה, בטח אמא שלך מנקה.
אני גברית לפעמים, אני נשית לפעמים, אני ילדה, אני זקנה, אני לא יודעת מי אני. חיה מוזרה שלמדה לביים.
צריך להפוך את זה. יש לי את הכוח של האדם הזר, יש לי הרבה יותר שיער.
בשבילי לעשות סרטים זאת קייטנה.
ביום הראשון שביימתי לא הבנתי איך לא עשיתי את זה קודם.
קייטנה.
אני אסתדר בזין על כולכם.
מה, כל הבמאיות שאת ראיינת כולם פמיניסטיות? לא.
Yes, that was in the directorship. Yeah.
I wanted to ask a question after those two clips. Do you see any resemblance between the United States and Israel in regards to issues in cinema such as this?
Well, yes. And I will bring it from a perspective that is very, very, it happens right now. A few months ago, unfortunately, was the death of George Floyd. And I was following that. I was following the news. And then I came to Israel. I was in quarantine, and I thought about, as I said, I'm here talking about cinema. I'm not talking about here about Israel or about its community. I'm talking from the perspective of the calls it brings. And it talks about representation of the Black community. And I saw it as it says, and now this is the talk also in American cinema, representation of people, indigenous people, representation of minorities, of women. And this is all comes together. So the unfortunate event with George Floyd made me think about how it goes here in Israel. And then I thought, the usual suspect, it's going to talk about the Arab community, the Arab Israeli community, or the Palestinian community. But then I thought about a much more depressed community, the Ethiopian Jewish community. And I thought this is very, very, there is a resemblance with minorities in Israel to the States and everywhere, basically. And as I talked about women filmmakers here in Israel, there are much more women of color. And you know, there are many, by the way, I just want to say to our guests that signed, please, if you want to ask us a question, maybe we'll have time at the end, please write it in the chat room and I promise we will go there. So when we're talking about women in film, and there is much more place for more women of color, and you know, we had directors, many of you probably know, Ronitel Kabetz and Hannah Azulay Asfari, and some of those women whose success in the industry open to younger filmmakers, female filmmakers, including finally those coming from diverse ethnic backgrounds. And my first example is from Alamor Davidian. Actually, I'm going to talk about Alamor Davidian and Esti Almo. They are up-and-coming women filmmakers from the Israeli-Ethiopian community to have completed their first feature films in the last few years. Now, we're going to see both of these trailers. We're going to start with the trailer of Fig Tree, the film that Alamor Davidian. It's a complex and beautiful film. It's an artful blend, and I'm reading. It's an artful blend of African and Israeli cinema in a clear and a unique voice. Davidian has taken our experience growing up in civil war-torn Ethiopia, from which Jews fled to Israel, to tell a story about a teenage heroine caught between the safety promised and her family in Israel and her relationship with her Christian boyfriend. An intimate story on an epic scale, the film is a masterful production shot in Ethiopia with a mix of local and Israeli crew members. So we're going to see now the trailer for the film Fig Tree by Alamor Davidian.
እስራኤል ተቀምጣ የኔን ህይወት እመራለሁ ብላ የምታስብ ከሆነ ተሳስታለች።
አናዬ እኮ እናታችን ወደ ረዛ ያደረገች እንቆቅልሽ ከእናቱ ወሉቱ መልሶ እናቱን ይመታ።
አንተ
በሰገድልሽ
ህይወታችን እዚህ ሲኦል ነው። ነገር ግን ይህን ገሃነም የግድ ማሸነፍ ይኖርብናል አይደል? ልብ በሉ።
ፊቶት የተከፋው በእኔ አልተማመን።
አርባዬ ልንሳፈር ነው።
ኤሊስ እኛ ከሄድን በኋላ ህይወት ዞር ብላ እንደማታተውቅም
በቃ በሚጠሻ ሁሉን ነው።
በራሳችሁ ተነሳሽነት ሀገራችሁን ለመጠበቅ የግድ መለመን ነበረባችሁ።
ኤሊነታችሁ ኤሊ
እኔም ባንቺ እድሜ እንዲህ ነበርኩ። በፍቅር ላይ የምጨምረው ነገር የለም።
ይህ ቦታ ገነት እንጂ ሲሆን
That was the trailer to Fig Tree. Well, I saw it. I didn't see the trailer for such a long time. And I'm thinking how horrible it is that we do hear and read what's going on even today in the last few months on the border of Ethiopia and Eritrea, that citizen war is continuing for more than 30 years. And this is a very, very powerful film. It's the first, and I'm being careful, although I did check, it was the first feature film made by Ethiopian Jewish Israeli director. I'm very happy to say there is another one that made by Esti Alamo. And this is a completely other film, which is wonderful because we don't want to show just the artsy, the artos films. We want to see films that are for everyone. And Lady Titi Singing Blues, and I'm reading again, is Esti Alamo's feature debut. It's a comedy reminiscent on the American film Tootsie, It's about a 27-year-old Ethiopian who lives in Tel Aviv and dreams of becoming a famous singer. He borrows money to pursue his dream, but instead is pursued by those from whom he borrowed money. We saw many films like this, right? I will talk about it later. To avoid capture, he dresses up as a woman and becomes a coordinator for an Ethiopian women empowerment group where he meets the love of his life. So without further ado, let's jump to see the trailer of Lady Titi Sings the Blues.
שואו ביזנס זה החיים אמיתיים. בחורות, קהל, כבוד וים כסף.
הכל קשור לכסף.
מה זה? אין פה את הכל. מחר בבוקר אתם תצא פה עם כל הכסף.
מה הקטע האומנותי שהכנת?
קטע אומנותי? ברור. רק מה השכר?
בכל זאת יחידה עם רישיון נהיגה. מאז שעברת לתל אביב מסתובב לך הקופסה?
אם אתה עוד מעט תשרוק לי, אני אפרק לך את הפרצוף, שמעת? תגיד, השתגעת? אני בסכנת חיים. אני בטוח חדשים, אני מחסות כסף ואני עוף מפה. רק היום, בחינם, סדנה לעצם אנשים. את יודעת איך זה אתיופים? אפשר לעבור מתי שרוצים. חושבת שאת בחורה, הרמה, זה שחלות של מישהי שלוש את העולם.
את חושבת?
לא, אבל עשה לך טוב.
הייתי הזאת, בחורה עם קלאסה.
بلو نهيد من ردات النمسل
سرقو يا لي جا سرقو
اي فهم اللي بني
אני באמת לא לסבית. למה משהו שלי גזעני? כזה קטן.
Okay, 1 second. So that was Lady Titi Sings the Blues. I want to say that when I prepared this event, I wasn't in Israel while the film screened here. It got the worst reviews. It got really bad reviews. The critics didn't help the film, and I read and I saw article and I saw interviews with Esti Alamo, and she said I didn't expect anything else by it. And you know, this is when I'm seeing it, I'm thinking about the film of Tyler Perry, that probably many of you know is an African-American actor and director, very successful. He made this. He has this character also, a Medea, a guy that wear women clothes, and it's very targeted to African-American community. And even she says, this is my humor. I know my audience see it. And I think this is beautiful, that she doesn't feel like that she needed to please everyone. She doesn't need to make this artsy film. And this is exactly what we're talking about, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the film industry, because basically it's not just to make films about those topics, it's to go to those communities. So this is the example when we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, not just to preach to your own choir, but then I'm talking to a Caucasian American Jews audience that we know watched a lot of artist films, is to go to those communities in the States. And I'm talking about the States, but I'm talking about Israel, basically about Israel, to go to find those communities that actually can see those films, that it's for them, among the others.
Well, we've seen a lot of films with LGBT topics in the last few years, and some of them have been extremely successful, like The Cake Maker, which is a tremendous film. Are there any new waves in Israel for LGBTQ cinema that's coming up?
Thank you. I just want to say I got some SMS messages. People are asking me where you can watch those films. So later on, on the email, we will make sure to see. I'm quite sure that Fixed Read it is available in the States. I need to check about Lady Titi, but for everyone that are asking, we will send an email with all the places that you can find those films available. And regarding
Definitely.
LGBT, yeah. You know, late LGBTQ films are very significant in Israeli cinema. And of course, yes, The Cake Maker was a huge hit back then in 2000. It was winner of the 2018 Ophir Awards for Best Film, the equivalent to the Oscar. It was very, very successful. It made a lot of money in the niche of art house film or foreign language film. Now, I want to talk about another angle that also equivalent to what's going on in American cinema. It's about films that bring representation of transgenders in cinema. And 2 years ago, in 2018, there was the film Flawless. In Hebrew, it's called the Nesha, the prom, but in English, they called it the Flawless. And it had the first film with a transgender actress, Stav Strashko, and she was nominated for best actress in the Ophir Awards. She didn't win, but she was nominated. And let's start by seeing the trailer for this film. It's a film. It's mostly for teenagers. And let's see the trailer of Flawless, and then we'll talk about it.
וואו, איך יפה לכם. זה ריק. איפה הייתם כשאני חלק את הציצי?
בתור לשכל?
עכשיו באים, השנה תכף נגמרת.
פלטה, קרש גיוץ, עמק יזרעאל, שקע ברומטרי. אני הייתי בטוחה שרק מישור החוק. גם.
יציתי לפרום?
כן.
יציתי לפרום?
אני חכה למכוערות? לא מכוערות. תאונות שיפוט.
אני מספרת לך משהו, אבל את בונקר.
תשמור סודות אני יודעת.
מוציאים כליה, ועל הדרך מכניסים את הסיליקון.
וואו.
נותנת את זה, ואת מקבלת החלום שלך.
עכשיו כואב.
עדן, פעם אחרונה שדיברת על זה עם חברות, אנחנו עברנו דירה.
הגיע הזמן, עדן. הגיע הזמן שתחי כמו שאת רוצה, נכון? אני פה בשביל להגשים את החלום הכי כמוס שלך.
שאני אבוא ואני אראה, ושיפתח, שיש בלב, שאני אקום ואני אגיד, ככה זה אני. שעולה תרצה ותאהב אותי, כמו שבחלום, רק באמיתי.
עזבי אותם, את מושלמת.
האמת היא שהוא יזמין אותי לפרום.
מי מהם?
זה שיזמין.
Okay, so that was the trailer to Flawless, the prom, the Neshef in Hebrew, and I see there is a representation here of Ethiopian teenage girl, and of course Stav Strashko. And you know, also, Susan, in the States, there is also this big conversation constantly about characters. First of all, the representation of transgenders in cinema. And there is a big talk if people that are not transgenders will play transgenders, and now there's the talk. Why to do it? There are many transgenders actors. They can play those characters. We now see it coming to Israel as well. When I'm thinking and I'm being very careful, I don't think I can tell you about more transgender actors besides Stav Strashko. But this is the first example, and hopefully more to come now. Now I'm going to give an example because I didn't want to put the documentary film industry, which we can talk about it for hours another time. I do want to give an example for the film Family in Transition. It's another significant breakthrough about representation for trans acceptance. Ophir Turainin, he made this documentary film 3 years ago. It won Doc Aviv International Film Festival. It's the biggest documentary film festival in Israel, one of the most prestigious documentary film festivals in the world. And it brings a lot of stigmas that we had, and it breaks those stigmas. I'm quite sure this film was screened in Cleveland. I think so, but again, we will make sure so you will know where to watch it. So let's watch I don't want to talk about it too much. I just want let's see the trailer of Family in Transition.
זה כמו להיות בטרן פה עכשיו.
כולה נולדתי, בכיתה A אני מגלה שיש לי 4 טרנסג'נדרים. איי, למה הכנסתי את עצמי?
ואני רוצה שנתחתן כמו 2 נשים. מצאתי את הבת שעולה עלייך. רציתי לראות עד איפה אני יכולה להגיע בלי לפרק את המשפחה. עד איפה אני יכולה לאהוב את אביב.
אחרי שאני אעשה את הניתוח, אני אהיה שלמה הרבה יותר עם עצמי.
לא יודעת, את צריכה דברים כאילו שאין בינם.
צריך להוציא את הגוף ולעשות גוף חדש.
כל המורכבות של התהליך לשינוי מין, לטפל ב4 ילדים וגם בעסק. אני מנסה להחזיק מעמד, ואני מרגישה שאני כבר קרובה ממש לקצה. אני מרגישה רע עם זה.
אבל למה את בוכה? זה מעציב אותי.
בדיוק ברגעים שהבית מתפרק, צריך לחבר אותו בחזרה.
אני יודעת מי אני יודעת מה אני יודעת מה עברתי.
אני לא יכולה לחיות בלי ביבי. אין לי אף אחת אחת.
מבוגרים, לא מבינים כלום מהחיים שלהם.
By the way, and I remember I met this family. I don't want to make a spoiler. It's really a great film. And the daughter, she's overwhelming. This daughter is overwhelming. She's now after the army. They filmed this film. They see the entire transition. I just remembered that I wanted to say regarding Flawless. It is based on a true story with no transgender. There was no transgender teenager in the film, but they decided to bring that story later on. And regarding why I wanted to bring the story of this specific films, because again, even in the LGBTQ community that is still considered a depressed community, the transgender community is the one who suffers the most and is the most depressed. So I think it's very important to bring that awareness. Especially today.
Yeah. You know, there are many minorities in Israel. Would you elaborate on how and when it comes to cinema, and if you think it's adequately represented in Israel, the different minorities of the population? Would you speak on that for us?
Yeah. I'm thinking, where should I start? As I said in Sabla, there were like, when people ask me, okay, sorry, when people, I invited some friends and colleagues to come to join this talk. So, oh, you're going to talk about unorthodox, or you're going to talk about shtisel, or you're going to talk about fauda. And I said, no, like, they're talking a lot about it. They're talking about, and I'm happy, really, I'm excited that the Orthodox and the religious community in Israel finally get representation in the media, and also get a worldwide visibility. I'm happy the LGBTQ community is getting visibility through cinema. There are many, many more. Although Israel is in the size of New Jersey, but you know, it's also the melting pot, the famous melting pot that you're throwing everyone here to the spot and you stir. But it's also Kol Israel Chaverim, all Israel are friends. And yes, we're seeing much more. I am, and we'll go back later, I am a bit concerned that we don't see enough stories, enough films made by the Arab Israel, because it's, for this talk, I was looking, I didn't see any feature film from the last few years. There were like from 4 years ago, 3 years ago, I said like, it is important to me even to say now, we don't have enough narrative feature films made by Arab Israeli filmmakers. And this is something we need to be concerned, because we do want to see this representation. It is important and it needs to be said. I do want to bring the stories, I do want to bring this of Russian community in Israel. We have two examples. Now I'm seeing like we're starting to run out of time, so we're going to skip the first example that I wanted to bring from the film Asya, which is Israel's entry for the 93rd Academy Awards. I know, but because we're going to skip it, but I'm just going to. You're all going to see it. It was won the Ophir Award. It's Israel's submission to the Oscar. It has Shiraz, the wonderful Shiraz. It comes to theaters soon. We will send you the info about the film. We're going to jump now to see the film by Roman Shamonov. We're going to see just the beginning of the film. It's called Here and Now, and then we're going to talk a little bit about it. So let's watch Here and Now.
Мусора, пацаны, мусора! Быстро, блядь! Все, погнали! Здесь уже, ну, давайте! Ну, я не шучу, давай! Соломон! Ты что, глухой, пошли мусора! Секунду! Да горы мусора, вот они уже! Давай уже быстрее! Руку! Блядь, ну быстро, ёпты, здесь уже! Хорош, погнали, я тебе говорю! Соломон! Дай руку, Соломон, блядь! Дай руку, Соломон! Ну, блядь, за мной!
Тут не сыночек маменькин, а отца-наследник. На треке брат, бить нам посредник. По выходным я разгребал бардак, а в понедельник кружило голову мне так, будто упал на гельник. Ты знаешь все ходы, этим бездельникам не избежать хандры. А я с фортуной предпочту на ты, вкратце обо всем. Тут все свои, кроме жилья на съем. Старая школа, где Высоцкий, там же вальс Бастон. Чувствуешь, я ноты впитывал с молоком матери. В них же топил тоску, там ни грамма украденного. Пока большие дяди грабили страну. Кем хотел стать, не помню, строго знал, кем или буду. Не вру, а наболевшем расскажу беду. От ранее сказанного ныне отрекаться глупо. Кому все это надо, пока не пойму. Этому звуку не познать просторы модных клубов. Так уж повелось, братья.
Okay, thank you. Let's continue. So that was Here Now, a film by Roman Shamonov. Roman Shamonov was born in the former USSR and immigrated to Israel when he was quite young. Through his entire career, he dealt with this group. In the beginning, he was following them like skaters from the city of Ashdod. And then he made a short film when he graduated his film school. And then he made a documentary film about them. And then he made a narrative feature following that group that comes, you know, and this is like a really Russian ghetto. I met that group. There used to be a Russian ghetto. Of course, they're now much more open, but he brings this story of a very close group. And this is important because basically the Russian community in Israel, if I'm not mistaken, is like 20% of the population. So we do see many films and new voices that comes from directors that obviously in documentary, but also narrative features. And you know what? I just changed my mind. We'll skip another thing, but we will watch just the beginning of the film Asya, just to continue this thought. This is again, although this community is a part of the Israel society, they still hang, many of Russian Israelis are hanging with themselves. They have their own clubs or have their own, and their own outlets. It's still, it's still closed. It's getting open much more, obviously, but it's still a closed community. So let's watch the beginning of Israel's entry to the 93rd Academy Awards.
Добрый вечер.
Добрый.
Одна здесь?
С подругами.
А почему не танцуешь?
А ты?
Thank you. It was important for me to bring this. I decided because I wanted to bring another thing of this community. I just thought about, I forgot to mention regarding Here and Now that you saw while he was the main protagonist riding on the bicycles, you can see the words, the song that was on the background. And this is the one who sings the song is a part of that community that Roman Shamonov was following for so many years. And he talks about the pain and he talks about the struggle. Asi is completely different. You can read about it, you will see it. I have no doubt most of the people that are watching here will be aware of that. It's getting an American distribution. Before that, I mentioned that unfortunately, I didn't find, not just here, I'm a bit concerned that there is not enough representation of the Arab community in Israeli cinema. Obviously, we can see films about it with wonderful Arab actors made by Israeli Jews, but this is not the thing. Of course, it's important. I'm happy there is representation of those stories, but it's also, again, diversity, equity, and inclusion that this community will get funds, will find funds and bring those stories from their own perspective, not without, another filter. Yet, I did want you to bring something that relates to this. And as I said, like women directors. So we have like a small scene from a short film. It's made by Israeli director Noah Osherov. She's an Israeli director based in New York City. She's now in Israel, by the way. She came to Israel for a vacation. She just told me, and I thought it will be fit because it talks about, and you will see a small part from her short film called Sofa So Good. The search of an American young woman from Arab heritage to search for her sofa. She lives in Brooklyn, and this is the scene where her mother comes for a visit. You will see the famous, wonderful actress Iyam Abbas. You know her from Succession. She was born in Nazareth. She lives in Paris for many, many years. She's a wonderful actress. So and I'm very happy to know that Noah could get the wonderful Iyam Abbas. She's such a great actress. So we're gonna see, before we're gonna close this first session out of 2, we're gonna see the scene from Sofa So Good.
حبيبتي شو بطيء الصبوة وكل شيء مخربط مع كل التكنولوجيا اللي عندهم اياها اليوم وبعدهم ما بزبطوا شيء. I swear I run faster. يلا at least I get to see you. بدي اعمل بيبي.
اوكي.
شو؟ غيرتي بيتك؟
لا.
وانت كمان مغيرة؟ ضعفتي أو نصحاني؟ وين السوفا؟ رح تجيبوا غيره؟ مع كل مصرياته لرامي المفروض تقدروا تجيبوا غيره.
مام؟
شو؟
السوفا مع رامي.
وين؟
بمحل أحسن.
شو قصدك؟
رامي فل.
بعدك رح تتجوزي، ايه؟
أكيد.
الحمد لله.
ماما شو بكي؟ أكيد ما رح أتجوزه، ما عندي حدا أتجوزه.
عبير ليه تركته؟ شو عملتي؟ لأنك مبوزة مثل البومة دايما؟ قلتلك تبتسمي شوي. حاكي لحالك. عمره ما يرجع، بيستمنى فيكي. في كمان بالشنطة.
مام. ما بدي اياك تعتلي همي.
أنا مش عتلاني همك.
عن جد؟
عن جد. لا عندك ولا شغل ولا خطيب ولا سوفا. شو عندك تخسري؟
Yes, thank you. We can. Okay, eventually a mother is a mother, right? It doesn't matter if it's a Jewish mother or a mother is a mother. And I thought I think it's wonderful because I really appreciate the work of Yam Abbas, and the fact that Yam Abbas was willing to be a part of a small short film by a director that based in Brooklyn, in New York City. I see we have a question by Dvora. I don't know, everyone can see it. How about Janine, that which was banned for distribution lately? And you can see here, everyone can see it. Susan, do you see it?
I do, yes.
Okay, I want to make sure it's not for me. And a link for the film Janine. I think everyone can Google about it. It is. I also read that it was banned lately by an Israeli court. I have nothing specific to say about it. It's not a new film. It's a film from many years ago. And as I said, this is obviously there is some. Those are like political stuff that I have nothing to add in this conversation. And again, it's a film from 12 years ago. It's not something that representing this topic of contemporary Israeli cinema. But maybe just to think about, this is maybe for another lectures that talks about political documentary documentary filmmaking that is very, very strong. Basically, every country has, we have as a diverse film, also diversity in the documentary filmmaking. So we have the personal films, we have the political films, we have films from all topics, but it's good. Please, everyone here should read about it and think about it. I think this film is also available. I do know that they now it's also banned, but some of them just send it they opened it in the internet, in the world of the internet, you know, you can't really censor everything. And we see a suggestion for next time, put the phones on full screen next time. Thank you. Okay, we will keep this in mind. We didn't want to have like glitches. We didn't want to have technical glitches. I can talk like for 4 more days about it to bring examples, but it was important for me specifically to bring at this first meeting, our event, to bring those stories. And I know we're going to send you a few links for other short films. Don't worry, there is no homework. They're short, very wonderful films. And in our next session, we will go deeper. We will try to go deeper.
Well, I want to thank you, Eran. It's been very inspiring, and I love the cross-section of films that you presented to us today. And welcome. We're so excited to have this Israeli Cinema Film Forum with you.
Thank you. And I say we do have a little bit more time, so now is the time. If anyone wants to send like a comment and to ask us a question, if there is, let's see, maybe I missed
a few more minutes. Someone said a rich selection of diverse Israeli films. Thank you very much for saying that. That's enlightening. We will have another session that I'll talk about in a moment, is in regards to Eran has a lot of other films that he's going to post, and also on the 23rd. We'll be back together again on February 23rd. Got a nice comment. It's a terrific program. Thank you very much for saying that. And anyone else, and the next time we meet, please feel free to put your questions or answers or comments in the chat, and we'll certainly try to read all of them and answer your questions, or Ron could answer your questions.
No, Susan, I'm sorry, and let's see. Okay, I see we have another question. Is one of the reasons for so few films by Arab Israelis a question of funding opportunities? You know what? It's a good question. The Israeli film industry is different from the American film industry. American film industry is, you know, it's a bit, everything is a business, obviously, but the American film industry, there is no government funding. In Israel, there is government funding. But I'm not sure it's a problem of funding. This is the story of, as I said, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So how do you bring awareness of those filmmakers to help them to make those films? I think so. There are not many films made every year. There are like around 30 films, but maybe it's about time. And they are trying. Some of the funds are trying, you know, to help more Arab Israeli filmmakers to make films. You know what? Now I remember. 2 weeks ago, and we were in the middle of pandemic. There is a new film just shot by Yab Tarbiyeh. He's a graduate of the Sam Spiegel Film School, and he just shot his first narrative feature. So let's hope next year, maybe we'll be here again. Maybe we can host Yab Tarbiyeh for his film. But obviously,
yes, that would be wonderful. There's so many, and I know you're going to bring so much more. So we're going to close up this session now, and I want to thank you again, Eran. And as a reminder, you will soon receive links to some Israeli short films, and you're also automatically registered for, like I said before, February 23rd conversation with Eran and Greg Levine, who is the chair of the Federation Community Relations Committee and a board member of the Cleveland International Film Festival, and me. And we will be viewing more shorts too. If you enjoyed today, we invite you to invite all of your friends to join us on February 23rd as well. We look forward to seeing you then. Please look out for more upcoming events from the Cleveland Israel Arts Connection and Siegel Lifelong Learning. For continuous updates and more opportunities to experience Israeli arts and culture, please be sure to join the Cleveland Israel Arts Connection page on Facebook. and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.